Last 3 days. So I generally measure the rain first thing in the morning, so about 6 o'clock when I'll take the dogs for a walk, measure the rain, that's yesterday's rain. So that's always measured at about the same time of day.
Yep. Yeah. Have you got a rain gauge, or are you doing that farm bot? You've got a farm bot?
No, I do have a rain gauge that's just there on the post. Measure it daily. So,
yeah. No, awesome. Well, thanks for sitting down with me on the Grazing Game podcast, Brian. I really appreciate you hosting me and taking the time. It's great to be here. And thank you for the amazing hospitality.
Don't worry. Very happy that you've made the effort to come over and see what we do.
Yeah. You've treated me to some amazing produce. We had some of your mushrooms this morning.
Yep.
We had some local eggs. We did a bit of a farm tour, showed me your grazing setup, and now we get to sit down and have a yarn about how you operate it all, which is...
Yeah, no, really pleased you could make it, Cam, and I'm always excited about being able to tell the story a bit and encourage others to have the faith to go some of the paths that we've already taken.
Yeah. Yep. Is sharing a meal something that you guys like to do with a lot of the guests that come onto the place?
Look, my wife's a fabulous cook. Okay, so I encourage them to enjoy some of the cooking she gives. Look, it's always nice to be able to sit down over a meal rather than just be formal all the time. Mm-hmm. It makes it much easier to get to know someone when you're having a meal and just getting to know each other. So it's part of what we generally make an effort to do. That's for sure.
Yeah. Great way to build connection. Food, doesn't it? And kind of seems like maybe that's slowly going away with the rise in convenient food and packaged food and fast food. No one really gets together and eats anymore, do they?
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, we make an effort, and we've done a big job here since we've come to Eastwell to get to know neighbours, have a real good connection. Like we started up the Christmas, street party once we came back here, and we have regular meals with some of the neighbours. And look, we try and do a little bit of community stuff regularly. That's for sure. Yeah. Not necessarily, we don't necessarily get involved with all like the likes of CWAs or the local race club or anything like that so much, but more so with what we do, which is our food business. That's for sure. We're members of FAN, which is Food and Agribusiness Network.
Yep.
And they operate from effectively north of Brisbane right through to north of Gympie. And they're an organisation that effectively connects everybody, so from the farmer to the retailer and to the end users and restaurants and the like. So they're a really good organisation. And then, of course, Slow Food Noosa is our one that we're part of. So Slow Foods is a international organisation, and they're real good push for clean, healthy, sustainable, fair food, and so we're really on board with them and their ethos.
Is home kill something that you guys grew up doing when you were younger, and was it always like a bit of a family event when you would do one?
Yeah, definitely. Like we were Western Queensland, so we were out at north of Longridge on a sheep place. So Dad used to kill sheep every week, obviously, and we would have fresh meats and fresh organs and fresh bits every week. I love brains. I love Mum used to do a really good liver, gravy liver onion mix. That was fabulous. And then when we came here to the farm back in the late 60s, early 70s, then they started to kill beast, like a meat, beef as our main meal then. And so, it was done as a hang it up on the tractor and cut it up in the morning before the flies got rampant.
Yeah.
And we're all part of that,
yeah.
And we get to eat. Mum used to do the skirt steak as one of the first bits she'd cook from a kill. Love brains, so the brains were always extracted. Yeah. Which puts a lot of people off because a lot of people don't like brains, but I just love them.
You love it?
Yeah, they're good.
I don't think I've tasted brains.
Oh, really?
But Mum was from around Blackwell, and she used to talk about doing the same. And
well, sheep's brains easy. It's pretty easy to extract, and it's easy. But yeah. So it's good.
Cool. So sheep station. You grew up at the sheep station station in Longreach.
Yep.
And now we're here, and you're growing an African breed of cattle and selling mushrooms in Kin. Can you share some of what that journey has looked like, which has led you to be here?
Yeah, righto. It's a long journey, obviously. And as you and I were chatting a little bit earlier, was that I did do Gatton Ag College, So I was here. We came here when I was 7. So that's the starting point of coming to Eastwell Farms. Well, it was just called Eastwell back then. So we've sort of labelled it Eastwell Farms once we became doing produce. But Eastwell was a family place in Ireland. So it was House of Ussher was Eastwell, at Eastwell. And or Eastwell House, I think is how they called it. Anyway, so it got adopted as the name for this property when Mum and Dad bought it. And it was 2 dairy farms that Dad combined to make it into one beef farm, effectively.
Yeah.
And so that was late 60s to early 70s. The development happened with Dad, at the helm.
Yep.
And I was just a kid. So I was, as I said, 7, went to the local Kinkin State School, and then off to boarding school following that. And that was TSS, or the Southport School, down at Southport. And that was because both grandfather and Dad had been at TSS. So, I sort of followed the footsteps a bit. I loved school. I wasn't necessarily the best scholar, but I loved school. Probably a lot of boys say that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And then I sort of followed. I was going to try and get into the Air Force, but I got accepted into Gatton before I got the acceptance to the Air Force. So I went Gatton, and I ended up doing 2 associate diploma courses, one in animal husbandry and one in ag, which was over a 3-year period. And then effectively started working in the industry. I went out as a station hand, and then went on to family blocks for a bit and back to being a station hand, sort of a bit of a transition through time. But all of that was conventional. Everything, the learning at college, the work I was doing was all conventional. And then it took me sort of a property that we had, or Dad and Mum had bought out west of Baralabar. And it was a block that was 40,000 acres of trees, effectively. And, it was effectively a good breeding block, but not an easily managed one. It was lighter soils, box soils. And challenging one to manage and to do a lot with. And Dad's always been very conscious and careful about spending money, so, wasn't looking to spend too much on the farm. I went there briefly to sort of manage, but then, changed direction and left that and went down to the effectively Wandau and Taroom area again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which put me back as being a station hand again. I was on a property called Cockatoo Station near Taroom for a little bit. A very short interlude into Toowoomba in order to do a little bit of management. So I ended up in a food distribution centre called Coldright at the time. So I ended up being the warehouse manager there. And we were, in and out of food. So cold, dry, cold, and frozen. So we did the whole lot and just delivered to restaurants, cafes, hospitals, schools, all over southern end of Queensland.
Just a big wholesaler.
Yeah, it sort of, yeah. So they would buy product into their store and then deliver it to the businesses that were wanting, certain deliveries. So that was an introduction, which was good for me to see all the different food types and how they went and the small margin there is in distribution and the challenges that go with it. And one of the ones I always say regularly is that bloody use-by date's such a pain.
Yes.
We were constantly watching use-by dates and trying to make sure we didn't get caught with product that was just effectively got no value. And that was challenging. But really good learning for me as far as food and food distribution. And not that it was something I was chasing. I was just chasing management.
Was there meat involved in that as well?
Frozen
meat?
Yes.
So you got to see a little bit of how that worked behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was mostly pork and chicken, not much beef at that point in time as far as frozen beef.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely plenty of pork and chicken in that realm. But, a lot of prepackaged stuff. A lot of your prepackaged stuff.
Yep.
It was sold that way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You ended up at your own block in Chinchilla. Was that long after that?
No, I did go to Chinchilla from there, but I worked with a mate that was already at Chinchilla. He had and I'd bought some years earlier, I bought a block of chinchilla, but hit a bad drought, and so I ended up leasing it and not running it myself. So when I went back there, I did start to run it again myself, but I also worked for the Ronald Thompson, and he effectively employed me as a station hand. Plus, I was also doing the spray rig operations in his machine initially, which then put me down the path of getting in my own machine later on, and became a spray rig operator for my own business. Yeah. While still running a farm, it's like I bought a farm and kept going with running my own farm. Yeah.
Was there any properties between your chinchilla block and here at Kinkin, or did you go from there straight to here?
Little bit of history there. Like I had a place called Craigmore, which is on the river or on the Condamine, and that was sort of home base initially. And then good old Tarong or the CS Energy came along and said, no, they want that one. So they kicked us off effectively. But I did get lease back. So as much as I got kicked off, I went to another block just slightly north of there. It was on the Wandai Road, Chinchilla Wandai Road.
Yep.
And that was the first block that I started to develop to Lakina tree. So I was really impressed really early in life about how good grazing is on Lakina. And so when I first got an opportunity and a place I could do it on, I went hard. So I developed that block pretty quickly into trees.
Yes.
And it was and still is a super good way of getting grazing on, good grazing on reasonable land. Yep. And the returns there outshine any straight pasture that I've ever operated on since. Yeah, definitely.
So had you done any grazing courses or had a bit of a paradigm shift by the time you'd gotten to that Wandai Chinchilla block?
Absolutely. So I effectively was not doing very well as far as profitability at the end of the 80s and the early 90s. And so, I was searching for a way to make it better. So I did actually do a DPI course, which was modelled a lot on what RCS or, Resource Consulting Services are doing with grazing for profit. It was modelled on it and it was a lot cheaper. So I did that one. But I came away from that without any major changes, without really seeing that there was a difference that I needed to make. And there was no backup or follow-up that made me think I needed to change. So, yes, I did the course and learned a few things, but effectively nothing changed in my business. But a couple of mates had done the Grazing for Profit course and encouraged me to do it regardless of A, the time it takes to do it, a whole week, and B, the price to do it. At that time I think it was a bit under $3,000. Just do it is all I'll say to people now. Doesn't matter the time or the money, just do it, because that's where I got big changes, huge changes. As you mentioned, paradigm changes, where you're stuck in your thinking because you've always done it and the people you talk to have always done the same, so they're trying to say, no, it's always worked. We've always done it, or maybe it hasn't always worked, but we've always done it.
And we'll just keep doing it.
Yeah. And so, a lot of change happened after I did my first Grazing for Profit course. Then major changes happened when I followed on with their executive links, structure that they've got, which is a follow-on. You've got now a different mindset to make changes for your own world, and then they put you in a board structure, which is so powerful, where you've got other farmers sitting with you, discussing your issues and helping you make good decisions. And you then sit at the same table and help them in their business. So it's like having a whole heap of directors sitting down discussing your business, and it's so powerful. It was really powerful. So you start to then understand that, why are you doing this? Because it takes a lot of time and it doesn't make you any money. The old 80-20 rule, trying to identify those differences that will make a difference. And so that was powerful, really powerful. And I got so much out of it. It wasn't purely the changes to my business, but to the changes to me as well, personally. We were directed to do, directed, or probably the wrong word, but shown the light to go and do some personal development. So we would then book ourselves into other courses outside of us, yes, just other courses that were self-development courses. And that was really powerful. So making a lot of those sort of changes to A, yourself, and B, your business, all of a sudden everything, the whole world's different.
Yes.
It's so different.
On the executive link side, as you were saying, like, it sounds like it would be great because a lot of the time you know what you should be doing, but it just takes someone next to you saying, "What are you doing, Cam?" or "What are you doing, right?"
Yeah.
To implement.
And they've done it well enough and long enough now to know how to do it without, blowing some people's minds, you might say. Like a lot of people, and predominantly farmers, I suppose, I'll be broad, we're all individual operators and we don't necessarily like someone telling us what to do. But the structure and the design of it is no one's telling you to do anything. You're making the decisions. They're just helping you make a good decision. And that's what I found so fabulous. It was the fact that they would just be questioning, like you just said, why are you doing that, And you can give them an answer, always. You can always give an answer. Yeah, exactly. I'm doing it because,
Yeah.
But then they'll say, yeah, but have you thought about it like this, So they might just question you. And it's enough to make you think twice.
Yes.
And then you start saying, oh, maybe they're right.
Yeah.
Maybe they are on something. But they're not telling you to do it. They're just suggesting you mightn't be thinking correctly.
It's your decision.
That's right. Totally your decision. And the other part of it within that structure is they can set up that people will follow up. So you'll come away from a meeting and you might have had 3 or 4 actions that you're going to take home because of your meeting and what you brought to the table, and you make a decision, all right, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do this. And then they'll say, well, who do you want to follow up on that? And you say, oh, well, our mate can call me, in a couple of weeks I should have it done. And he will.
Yep.
And he'll just check, have you got it done?
Mm-hmm.
He won't say why not. He'll just say, have you got it done? And you'll say, no, but I'm going to get to it. Well, when will I call you again? Just following up, and that's powerful.
Yes.
Someone else is on your side. They're not giving you a hard time. They're just on your side.
Yes.
And change happens quickly. Yeah.
Just a bit of accountability, just
absolutely
constantly.
Yeah. Some people don't like to be made accountable, that's for sure. And that's when, the group will then assess how much pressure can be put on someone or not, And look, I've seen some amazing changes in businesses from that system.
Yep.
Amazing changes.
Oh, the amount of people I speak to that highly recommend a lot of those courses. I've done the 3-day course, but really want to get around to doing the grazing for profit. And I think, as you said, like either way, you're going to pay the price, whether it's in mistakes, and loss in fertility or preg rates, or you just pay the bloody $5,000 to do the course.
Yeah.
You're gonna find out one way or another.
Well, I have no trouble in saying, just do it. Just do it, because it was powerful and it was worth every cent.
And are there any lessons you learned at that block managing Lakina that you think might be worth sharing? Things that worked well, maybe tips on how you were managing it as you were implementing it on other properties?
There's a couple of things that I could probably bring to light. Is that I was developing old cropping country into grazing country. And so there was a lot of stuff that had to change in the environment. And we weren't as soil focused then as what we are now. And certainly not really understanding biology as much as we focus on now. But when I was transitioning that farming country, I did the same practices that I did in the farming. So I nuked it, got it to be bare ground, and went and planted Lakina. And I used residual chemicals to keep it clean of anything else except Lakina in my establishment. Now, it worked really well. And Lakina does need to be looked after when it's in its infancy. It is a hard plant to get established initially. It's sensitive as a small plant. It doesn't like to punch out through a crust. It's a challenge to get it established. But once you do, it's a super duper tree effectively, and you can cruel the hell out of it and still come out the other side. But there I was with bare paddocks with little trees growing in it. So then I had to try and establish my grass. So this is where a little bit of my learnings that came through the Grazing for Profit started to kick in, because I went out there initially and I was going to plough it and I was going to bloody bring it down to a seed bed and I was going to plant my grass seed, same as everybody does. I went out there and I broke about 5 shear pins in the first 20 metres because it was so hard. It was just coming up as bricks. It was just unreal. And I said, well, this has got knobs on it. That was effectively my words. This has got knobs on it. So I pulled out, I went away and I thought about it. So what I'll do is I'll just throw the seed on. And so I flew it on with a plane, and then I just started grazing the leucaena that was there. So I had my seed on the ground and I had trees to graze. So then I just did rotational grazing through those paddocks. And the first thing I saw was cultivation weeds. So good old flea vane was the first one, and solid, just heaps and heaps of flea vane. Doesn't matter, just put the cattle in and graze it. So then, now I'm not talking seasons, I'm just talking transition. So from flea vane to milk thistle, and I reckon it was nearly 100% milk thistle was the next plant that came. And so this is where you start thinking succession plants. You're understanding that these things come because of what we've done all before. So then I had just 100% of milk thistle, but I just still grazed the leucaena. So I'd put the animals in on a rotational basis, grazed the tree till I'd taken enough leaf off it, got them out and moved them on. So then I got the transition from that to some grasses started to come. And it was literally, it wasn't a full year and a half, but it was about a year and a half from bare ground to grass. And it was fabulous grass.
Yeah.
And then I was able to manage for both, tree and grass.
Yes.
And never looked back after that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to plough it.
Didn't have to plough it, just allowed a little bit of time for it to go
and the
through
disturbance.
The disturbance.
Animals going through was what gave me, obviously, seed soil contact for the grass and whatever else was there. But you needed succession to happen. You needed to get from that ugly, bare, long-term cropping country, which was probably got nearly zero biological activity, to some biological activity through those succession plants. And I love a plant. I tell people when they come here to the farm, I say, I love a plant that grows up and falls over within 2 years. If you've got a lot of plants that do it in 1 year, but if they do it in 2, it's still good. So they're going down, they're normally tap-rooted plants, so they're going down deeper than just some of the little plants. They'll grow up and they will be tall, they'll be a woody plant, and then they die and fall over. How much better can you get for the environment than that? That's just feeding the system. Yeah. So, I suppose my excitement came with understanding that as I saw it happen. And I started to really understand what I'd been told through some of the course stuff that we'd done. Yes. Because I never even thought about it before. Never even gave it a thought that we need to have succession to make a change from a really bad start.
Like if you reflect on your learnings when you were at the Queensland Ag College, which it was called back then, how closely does that align with your beliefs and your practices now? Do they match up at all?
There wouldn't be much. Might be 10%.
Yeah.
How to cut a cow, maybe.
Yeah.
Look, I think I said it to you a little bit earlier, but there was so much from Gatton that you didn't think that you needed or used until you literally started doing something in the same game. So when I started doing farming, which I'd never done here at the farm as a kid or anything, I'd never done any broadacre farming until I'd left Gatton. And so I went on to a couple of work experience and was in tractors with 60-foot machinery and whatnot. That was the first I'd encountered. But when I went and worked for Ronald Thompson at Chinchilla, I did a lot more with cropping, and we were doing a lot of spraying, obviously, as preparation for planting or over crop stuff for weeds or insects, so both sides of it. That was all part of what Gatton taught us. Yes. Because that was what was happening at the time. Yes. That was part of their curricula, and that's what we learned. But now there's very little of that I would say I adopt and use in a day-to-day way. I like to think I'm a good land steward. I may not be the best animal husbandry man
Yeah.
because I really struggle from a point of view of dollars and cents
Mm-hmm.
on spending too much on an animal that can't repay it.
Yes.
So sometimes an animal will go out my door quicker than maybe if someone wanted to spend a lot of money with a vet.
Yes.
And now whether it's out the door as worm food or out the door as food, either or.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so animals, I don't like animal suffering, that's for sure. No. So I will act, but it might be an act that may not be in some eyes, the best. Which
Yes.
In other words, you will terminate in order to, cease the suffering.
Yeah. That kind of comes back to what I've heard a lot of people say recently, which is that you've got to be, and I definitely agree with it, is that we've got to be financially sustainable before we can be environmentally sustainable. Like, we need to be able to put food on the table and pay the farm off while looking after the environment.
Absolutely.
And it's absolutely a forgiven. You've got to go with making some money to stay there and continue to do it. When we have our farm days here, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but we encourage people through our talk to say, it's your dollar that makes a change. It's not my dollar that makes a change. It's the person that buys our produce that makes the change, because they're the ones making the decision to spend that smidgen more on good food product in order to sustain what we do to get that good food product. So it's a chain of the client or the customer has to spend the dollar first to support us doing what we do in a good way, and then it's all sustainable. The thing that gives me heart is it's a lot of young mothers now are definitely on board with the thought that the food is their medicine or food is their, saviour to healthy children, because there's a lot of ill health that we've seen for the last 30, 40 years that have crept in through possibly industrialised foods. And I'm really strongly on belief of that, is that the industrial side of things has taken us down with a lot more chemicals in foods. When you read a label and you see all the extras and additives that aren't real food. So, and our bodies are... Can't pronounce it.
And our bodies really just don't know how to process it. Yeah. So what they do is they tend to stick it in places, and then other stuff happens, Cancer is, a common word now, and we've all lost friends and people through cancer. The scary part is it's starting to happen to a lot of younger people. When you get a 2- and 3-year-old that's getting cancer, and you say, well, why? So it's got to come back to then the genetics of mum and dad. Where has it come from? It's that longer term issues of food and our environment that we've lived in that are starting to make it bad. So a bit like what we do with our animals, we now, and we'll talk more about it, no doubt, is that we've come here with the ethos of doing it chemical free. And the animals that we initially started with on the farm here couldn't hack it. They just got flogged with the parasites. It's a high tick environment. The cattle tick is everywhere here. And I don't think we'd need to have cattle in the paddock and they'll still be there. They've got ways of surviving on whether it be roo or deer or whatever else out there. So we had to change our way of thinking and say we've got to get an animal that suits the environment. Number one thing, you've got to get an animal that suits the environment so that we don't have to go out there and look after it with, industrial chemical type, fixes. So when we went to Nguni as our choice of animal, it has really worked well. It's worked well because they're a high parasite resistant animal. Yeah. Now, they then have some other issues in the fact that they're a smaller animal. But if you listen enough to different, podcasts, is where I get a lot of info now about grass-fed, grass-finished, you don't want a large animal because it takes so much energy to run a large animal. You've always got to get high-protein feeds for them. And I don't think anywhere has that for 100% of the time.
Yes.
And that's why people go out and grow a winter crop, because they can't do a good thing through winter,
Yes.
And so we get pushed down these paths to do, so, I say to people, well, I've done the numbers. It does not pay to grow oats. It may pay if you've got water, in other words, irrigation water, but even then when I was doing the numbers, as soon as you started pouring water on, particularly now with high energy prices, it probably still doesn't pay, but it does finish an animal at the wrong time of year.
Yes.
That's the difference. Okay?
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
So that's some of the reason that we've gone down certain paths. Once upon a time, everybody had their oats paddock so that they could finish their bullock and send it off to the meatworks as a finished animal. Nowadays, we don't do that. We more grow oats just to get through the winter, so they've got good feed for their animals through the winter, and they send everything off to a feedlot so that they can be fed off farm. That's the system that's in place. But if we're looking after our environment enough, and we've built and it's going to take time, it's not something that happens overnight. You build your organic matters up and you can start to grow more plants even into the winter, and that's something I saw at my chinchilla blocks. You grew more stuff into the winter, particularly your legumes and whatnot, because you've got 100% ground cover, you're holding your moisture in place. It might look brown, but underneath it's still got green. And you maintain some weight gains. You start to have an environment that can take an animal through the winter.
Yes.
And it's amazing how it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that I want to unpack in there and dive into. So maybe we just start. We got to the block. So when did you guys come to Eastwell here?
Yep.
And what did the management look like prior to you getting here?
Good question. Mum and Dad effectively ran this farm until 2007, and even then, even before they left, they did have someone else's animals on the farm, so they were adjusting at that time. But Dad was keeping an eye on waters and fences and whatnot. But then when they left from here in 2007, it became fully run by someone else. So it was effectively just leased out to someone else to run it. And as you would most likely know, when that happens, normally management falls away on maintaining infrastructure because the leasee person thinks, well, it's not mine to respond, not my responsibility. All I got to do is make sure it keeps working enough for my operation. And so effectively that's what happened. So when we came here at the end of 2018 and we took over from a guy that had had the block for 5 years in the beginning of 2019, there was 5 paddocks total on the whole farm, and effectively he was running it in 2 portions. So he had steers that he ran along the creek flats and he had the cows all on the hills. And they were all running from what you call surface water. So we got creeks and dams, not many, but some. And he managed to okay. He did quite all right. But at the end of the day, there was lots that needed doing. So when we came here, I knew from my experience at Chinchilla is I had to do a full-blown, change. We had to do a full-blown fences, water, yards, roads. Whole thing had to be done again. And so we just put aside our money that we'd, effectively built up over a little time and just spent it on the farm straight up, because I knew if I didn't do it straight away, you would never afford it in some ways. So water was the first thing, so a proper water system, put a big tank at the top of the hill, 150,000 litre, built on site. I think it's a Pioneer tank. I do advise people that's the cheapest form of storage, is the built on site with a bladder, definitely the cheapest. They seem good. They seem to last. You do the right thing at the start, set them up right. Electric pump in the creek and set it up on a pressure system. So double float, fill it right up. It'd go down about a foot, refill. So, and since then I've put an AgBot monitor on it so I could make sure I was, aware of what was going on. Sending notifications is great.
Just like when you were down in Tasmania.
Yeah, when I was on holiday, I saw that it was down below 60%. I was, what's going on?
But how, I mean, just on that technology, how handy was that?
That's right, exactly. How handy, yeah. So I was able to get my managers at the time to go and try and suss the issues. So that was good. But Murphy's Law, it always goes on when you're on holiday. Doing the full-blown water system first, and with I'd already drawn up what I considered to be a pretty handy fencing plan. Trying to fence hills away from flats, because you know that animals just naturally will graze differently in those sort of areas. Tried to do the topography breakup and centralised water, for wagon wheel style, distribution. So, there's one valley in there that's got 6 paddocks all around one water, and it's probably a third of the farm nearly. So it's all on one trough. And then I had to strategically put troughs to service the outer edges and the creek flats. And I did mention earlier to you, some of the talk is you should put your water at the top of the hills so that where the animals camp is going to bring your nutrient to the top. In this environment, and I don't know whether it works everywhere, but in this environment, my animals don't actually camp on the water or near the water. They don't seem to. They camp where it's comfortable. Because I'm pretty hilly, they will camp where it's a little bit flatter, number one. That's the first choice I think I see. So either right at the top where it flattens off, or in hollows, like I think you might be able to see the cows up the valley.
Probably can see them out the back. They haven't moved since we came this morning.
No, they're all camped down.
Yep.
And so they do tend to camp where it's comfortable. And I will make the comment right now, this Nguni breed don't chase shade.
Yeah, right.
They don't chase shade.
Love a little bit of tan.
They don't mind just camping out in the sun. And yet, in the same district, there's plenty of people that run Angus and a few droughties and whatnot. You go along and you see them, they're all under the trees along the creek and whatnot. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's good, because they're not going under the trees along the creek and dropping all their shits. It's everywhere, it is reasonably spread. So personally, I'm seeing that, number one, the type of grazing we do doesn't make them camp near the water. And number two is the breed also makes a difference to that.
Yeah.
They don't search certain areas like under shade or tree lines, they're just out there. So that's exciting too. And I know that I'm getting a better result on my land because of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then of course the big set of yards, because the yards that Dad built were where the dip used to be.
COVID yards?
The COVID yards, because we got back from an American trip and we were told we couldn't go anywhere. So I used to go out and just weld all day, and putting the rails on the post. So, we got them finished reasonably well, and it's a good set of yards. They're central on a decent slope so they don't get boggy. And where Mum and Dad built was where the dip used to be, like the dairy farmers did used to dip. And so he just built the cattle yards for his beef operation where the dip was, as you would. But it's flat and it's on the creek and it was always muddy. Always muddy. So
yes. Yep.
Yep. And they pretty much rusted to pieces anyway. The wood was rotten, the posts were rusted, and it needed a lot of work.
New set. You got the steel yards.
Yep.
Built further up on the hill.
Just off the flats.
Off the flat.
With a bit of slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did the water. We've done the yards. Can you talk a little bit about how you've done your paddock divisions, because I like the look of a few of your posts there, which we spoke about earlier. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Okay, so from earlier experience, obviously I'd done 4 other properties, full-blown build on setting up lots of paddocks and good water. Obviously the water system went in before the fences. That was, to some people you say, well, why would you do that? Well, it was important to get water off creek and off dams and off, there's some yucky water here. And so we put the water in, then we went fencing. But I had the plan all drawn up. So 2 things that I did. Number one, we cut the posts on the farm. So they're native, timber. So using the timber that is in the district for the district is often a good idea. This country being as wet as it is, you generally only get about 30 years for a wooden post. And for a steely, as in even a galvanised steely, you might get 10 years. So that was the next change I went to. I went to aluminium posts. And I think they call themselves feral fencing now, but they used to be dingo fencing. But it's a bit like a H-iron, it's the shape of it. And it's, a good sturdy post, but it's all aluminium. Probably no different in price to a lot of the posts that you buy, certainly dearer than just a steely, but I think you might buy it for $22 or $24 per post. And because we're only doing electric fencing with it, it's a 2-wire electric, you can spread them out obviously and just use plastic droppers between. It was still the best value for, per linear metre or whatever you want to call style of fencing.
Yeah, light,
easy to work with. And when I do my posts, I don't worry about doing stays. That's something I went away from. I just dig 1.5 in the ground. So you get nice and deep, have an extra half a metre of post when you start, and they might move a bit, but not much.
Yeah, and you've only got 2 strands, really.
2 strands, it's not tight. Yeah, you're not looking. But I do the same even on my barb fences.
Yep.
Same. They don't move much. They don't. Once you go deep enough, they don't move much.
Yep, they're set there.
Well, as long as the man on the ram, does the job well.
Knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Did you have any stock? I'm assuming you didn't have this stocked at all while you're doing the water and then the fencing. You just held out from getting cattle.
No.
So when did the
Animals
water...
on.
Animals on?
Animals on.
Where were they?
Yeah, just running around.
Yeah, okay.
I might have had 5 paddocks, but I still rotated them.
Yep.
Yeah. You just do.
Yeah.
That's why water went first.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. I say to anybody, if you've got 2 paddocks, you can rotate, and you should.
Absolutely.
So I encourage people to be at least 5. It's a good start because you can do, a week in each paddock and you're getting your full month at least. But, yeah, we did. We just got animals on board. They were never not in the system. And you've got to try and make a quid somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, they were on board right from the start.
Yeah. Cool. Did you do a soil sample at the start?
Yes.
What did that look like?
Oh, it wasn't ugly, surprisingly. I think I was in the 3% range as far as organic matter. And it wasn't ugly, but, it was in the mid-2s. And that was the first year we were here. So, yeah, mid-2s to 2.8, I think, was our best one. But within 12 months, we did another lot. Well, a bit longer than 12 months. Let's say 14 months. Be careful here. We had raised by 1%. So we knew we were already on a starter to get a change. I haven't done another one since because I was looking to do a proper full-blown grid pattern type one that would, a bit like the guys that do your carbon, where they do it across the whole farm. But I haven't actually had the guys on farm to do that yet. So, and it's fairly costly. So,
have you looked into a carbon project?
Yeah, but we're a bit small as far as area of land to deal with.
Yeah.
Some of the guys that, they say, well, by the time you spend what you spend, it's probably not going to pay well enough, But I'm not worried. I mean, we're going to get the benefit by putting carbon in the soil simply through production and the way the animals and everything is running.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. So, yeah, it'd be nice to be paid for doing the right thing by the environment. That's for sure. It's lovely to be paid for doing the right thing for the environment. But I'm not going to sacrifice everything for that. Yeah. It's a bit of a challenge.
Have you had the ability to do any selective tree clearing? Do you want to do any and you're being hindered by laws, or have you done much, regrowth management, things like that? Yeah,
it's a bit of a constant here, Cam, because we're such a high growth area. It is rainforest country, really. So everything wants to grow. I keep mentioning that. It all wants to grow here. And a lot of them are trees, that want to grow here. So, yes, we constantly do some management as far as regrowth and woody weed. We started out by getting a excavator in and cleaned up a lot of woody weeds that had grown through that period of leasing the block where no one had done anything. So there was quite a heavy-duty lot done back in, trying to think whether it was 19 or earlier. I think it was end of 18, 19, somewhere in there. Right when we first took over, we did a big heavy-duty cleanup. And since then, pushed all that together and burnt the clumps and all that, tidied it up properly. Since then, we've now used just a slashing or mulching sort of thinking and operation because once you can knock the head off a tree and grow grass quicker than it, the tree generally doesn't do real well. And so we operate on the fact that if we've got our grazing management working well, our regrowth is lower and slower. So, yes, it still happens, and yes, you got to keep going out there and doing your mulching. But I think I will stretch from having to do it every year to every second pretty quickly.
Yes.
Because of that slower growth that you effectively inhibit its growth by growing grass quicker and higher. So the Soteria, which is probably our dominant grass here and has been since Mum and Dad did the development here, it grows tall and it grows quick. There's no doubt. You'll grow from a foot high to 3 foot high in a month. No trouble at all. So if we can get our timing right with our slashing or our mulching, whatever you want to call it, hit it about August, September, and hope for your early spring rains where everything bounces away, then the grass will outcompete for quite some time.
Yeah.
Until, you might get low again during your winter, and your winter grazing brings it all down again.
We've got some tropical grasses back over near Gameri, but nothing like this Soteria here. Jeez. So it's a constant management between the livestock rotations and your mulching, slashing.
Yeah. I mean, the animals make transition anyway, and I actually point out to that little flat out there to people, because they actually make transition without you realising it sometimes. You've got to keep a good eye on it. But there was a holly but tobacco bush out there on that flat, and it's not there now, and I didn't slash it. So Dad used to go out and spray it almost every day. He used to go out and try and kill the tobacco bush because it would grow up and be a management pain. But now that we've got higher density sort of grazing, those animals go and rub on those tobacco bushes and they ring bark them effectively, and they die. And then they'll go and scratch on it and break it off, and then you don't even see the remnants.
Yes.
So the animals themselves do a lot of tidy up all by themselves.
Yes.
And then I'm also hoping and wondering how long it'll take, but it'll change through the fact that we are increasing nutrients. There's no doubt that through the grazing regime, we will change it a bit through increasing nutrient, which comes through having biodiversity. We all know, if we've done the study, biodiversity builds soil. There's no doubt about it. So I'm not trying to kill anything particular. There's just some things that aren't ideal from a management point of view. And tobacco bush is one of them, that's for sure, because he grows almost into a tree and he's not edible. They seem to like him more, I think, maybe as a fly deterrent. Maybe he's got some ability to help with the buffalo fly, because they rub on him a lot. And we've got some burr, like we call it Chinese burr. It can be a problem where it's reasonably shaded, so the grass doesn't grow as quick as it does. I'll slash it maybe once a year if I have to, knock its head off, and then it'll still be there. But they graze on it a little bit, they browse, so there's always little bits taken. We'll see transition. We will.
So what breeds did you initially bring onto the place? What were some of the results? How did that unfold? And how has that evolved now?
Righto. So I came here with the ethos of trading. That's what I was doing at Chinchilla area. So as a trader, I'd go and buy someone else's animals, bring them home, try my best to put good kilos on, and then sell them off again. And it was all targeted at feedlots when I was at Chinchilla. But when I came here, I knew that I probably wasn't targeting feedlots. So some of my trade animals that I bought, or a lot of them, were females. So they're either heifers or cows and calves. The types of breeds I had. You ready? Brahman, Drought Master, Brangus, Angus, Charolais. Have I missed any yet? I had everything.
You tried them all.
I just bought... See, because I've done some of the training, KLR marketing sort of training, you don't buy just because they look good. You buy because of value. So I was buying out of yards and thinking, well, here's an animal that should be adaptive to this environment.
Local yards?
Yeah, local yards. And it's the right value. So I'm buying it at the right value. And I'd bring them home, and, of course, there were several of them that just cruelled me. Like the Charolais-based ones, horrible at tick. They used to get full of tick before I could even see they were full of tick, a bit hairier. And next thing, you were losing calves because they just had so much tick on them. I'll admit, some of it was management problem because I wasn't treating. I didn't want to treat anything. So I actually got forced to, for one round there, in my first year of operation, we had to do the whole herd. We got flogged. And I knew I was going to lose too many animals. I'd already lost 5 little ones. So we did do a full-blown, unashamedly treated for tick. And I did the injectable one where it gives you 90-something or 60-something days.
Cydectin or...
Yeah. And it's a long-acting. And and this is why I say to people, we don't want chemical in our food. We know that if it can last that long and keep killing bloody parasite for 60 days, and you think it's not in your beef, that's the mode of action. So... Yes, we did have to unashamedly treat back then. And from therefore is where we started to make the transition on the type of animal. So we brought in, we bought some cows, Brahman cows with Nguni calves at foot, and we brought in an Nguni bull and started, breeding with Nguni only. So the ones that went out the door were ones that couldn't handle the environment. Number one, they were the first ones out the door. Second ones that went out the door were ones that didn't breed, so then we started to transition. Now I have a herd where I've only got effectively one animal that's not Nguni of some content, and she's an old dairy cow that I've been told I can't
sell
her.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Nguni has done the job for us. As soon as we had the first cross, we had a lot of parasite resistance. Even an Angus crossed with Nguni had parasite resistance. We were seeing them not getting tick on them.
Yeah.
So we were amazed, effectively amazed. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the other tropical breeds you tried didn't seem to pick up the mustard?
Well, the Brahman still stands out pretty well. Like the Brahman cross Nguni that I've got, they're excellent cows.
They're good.
They're definitely excellent cows. Now, probably the reason I don't focus on Brahman is that they haven't got a great reputation for eating well, from the point of view of the meat quality. Yet the Nguni is fabulous from meat quality point of view. And I say to a lot of people, there's probably two reasons. Number one, we're doing a pretty good job of giving them a good feed every day, right up to the day they die. Number two is they've got a gut system that can handle lower protein feed. So our coastal country is lower protein feed. There's no doubt. It just is, because high rainfall, it's normally lower protein. Unless you go and, put additives in, which we just refuse to do. So we're working with a lower protein feed, but we want to still have an animal that does well and finishes well. That's where the Nguni steps up above the likes of the other breeds. So I've got Nguni Brahman cross animals currently that I've bought in and also bred myself, and they're not normally quite as well conditioned and rounded like the one from, let's say, the background of an Angus cow. So I'd like to think that I'll still use beefy animals where possible, making sure that they can environmentally survive in this country. If they can't, well, I don't need them. Like someone else can have them. That's not a problem. And they'll do a really good job for them. So
and can you speak to that at all? Because I've definitely heard about Sangha breeds' ability to cycle nitrogen a lot better as they supposedly evolved on the lower quality warm season grasses in Africa. Do you see any evidence of that?
I see it in a visual evidence, that's for sure. And I've got some photos that probably show it pretty strongly. I bought some animals from a guy who has Speckle Park Drought Master, and they're done like us, chemical-free, injection-free. And I bought them as weaners and put them in the same paddock as my weaner Nguni cross ones. When we had that tough winter just gone, so we had a really wet start to 2024, and when we get super wet here, obviously the quality of your feed goes off, probably anywhere it does. If you get really, really wet, the quality of your feed drops off, and it certainly did. And so we saw those animals drop away in condition that didn't have the Nguni.
Yes.
So, but I could show you the Nguni was still shiny and still happy and healthy. Now, whether they were gaining a lot of weight, they probably weren't, but they were still shiny and healthy compared with the ones that looked like they were going backwards. And they definitely probably were, because they got lice. They got infected with lice. So as soon as an animal, any animal or even human, gets down in condition or loses a bit of its ability to function well, that's when parasites get you. So here we saw it. Evidence was those animals that I bought in, not quite as adaptive to this environment, got affected because of the climatic conditions. Not that they weren't still getting a feed; they all were.
Yes.
It was just that it was tough environment at that particular time.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, well, the others have done all right. They've all picked up again now because everything went nice again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inherent body condition seems to be just like the start and the end, really, just an animal's ability to maintain body condition, to fight off
Yeah.
the pests and disease, but also have the fat to be able to cycle again. Do you notice the frame size, the more moderate frame size of the Ngunis probably help with all of that on your low quality grasses?
I'd love to answer yes, but I probably hasn't been going long enough to answer solidly yes.
Yeah.
What I've seen is the cows that I identify that can continue to have good body score, raise a good calf every year, tend to be the ones that do it every year.
Yep.
So yes is the answer for them. So then they come to the ones that I've put a lot of pressure on, and this is part of what I'm doing, and I'm probably paying a price in my early stages of doing this breeding program here, is that I'm putting a bull with my heifers and allowing them to go and calf as soon as they're mature enough to go and calf. So I'm dropping calves on the ground from 17 to 18 months old to 2.5. And if it hasn't put a calf on the ground by the time it's 2.5, I'm starting to think, do I want this cow? So, and that's the age a lot of people put the bull in.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're still 9 months down the track before they get a calf.
I know.
So if I then drop a calf between 18 months and 2.5, that little girl's got to work pretty hard. She's got to grow herself and a calf. And that's where I'll really see the difference. And I showed you 7 head of cows out there that are all looking great. None of them were poor, but they're behind in having their second calf. Only by a few months, 5 months or something.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to let them go off and be someone else's breeder, and they'll be a damn good breeder. But from my program here, they've already shown me, probably through their ability not to get the backing calf early enough, that they're not adaptive enough in this environment, because they didn't grow and get a good condition score to be backing calf in the right timing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm doing it really hard on my girls currently. I'm really testing them.
Testing them, yeah.
Really testing them. And I don't care what their background is, whether they're Brahman background, or a Brangus background, or a Charbray, or a bloody Drought Master, or a Brahman. It doesn't matter. I'm not being selective on breed. I'm not being selective on colour. I'm not being selective on size. I'm being selective on their ability to be adaptive and work in this environment.
Yeah.
And it just shows in what they do. It does. I've got some girls up there, and I think, they're a little bit poor on condition. It's their first calf. They're little girls. Come this time next year, if they put another one on the ground, they're fine.
Yeah.
They've done the job.
Yeah. 17 to 18 months, your heifers are having their first calf.
Can do.
I think
not all of them. That's
not
for
all
sure.
of them.
Yeah.
I think I saw something probably 2 weeks ago in the Queensland Country Life, and it was a breeder who was joining his heifers at 2 years old.
Yeah.
And look, everyone's got their own system, but even for mine, I was relating that to my little herd, and that's just far too long to be waiting for any type of income. I came across a really interesting article a few years ago by a bloke called Eddie Streeter. He was a Brahman breeder, Fairy Springs Brahman stud, and it was called Thoughts of a Cattleman, and I think it was just a collection of pieces that he had written. This is a little excerpt from the article that I just thought I'd read you and maybe see what your thoughts are on it. And it was written purely by him, just to be thought-provoking, and I think it's prevalent through a lot of breeds in the industry. But he said, "The relentless determination to have our Brahmins look and perform like other breeds is the major reason we are now in the situation we are in. We now have uncharacteristic problems arising in Brahman cattle, such as calving problems, high birth weights, low fertility, and coarse hair, with the lack of ability to counter parasites such as ticks. We now see Brahman cattle with tick infestations comparable to British and Euro breeds. I believe by breeding for high growth and bigger cattle, all we have done is made them taller and reach sexual maturity later. An example is the absence of testosterone in bullocks. A bullock left to get old will grow to be a massive animal. This is because of the lack of sex hormones to slow down growth, testicles. Now we can understand the problem with big, late maturing females."
I'm not going to say it's all that. Brahmins were brought into this country, and Dad was one of the early adopters. They were brought in because of the harsh conditions in the Northern Territory and Western Queensland, whatnot. And look, they worked well. They could survive in a tough environment. But in order to survive in a tough environment, they generally shut down on their production. They had a natural ability to not have a calf, a bit like kangaroos when they get a bad season.
Too adapted.
They were adapted for that reason. So they brought them in for their toughness, and unfortunately, they then started to select for what you've just read out there. Some of those things that they were selecting for, like large frames and nice looking or whatever it might be. And as soon as humans get involved in doing certain things, it changes. It will make a change. And now whether it's for the good is another question, isn't it? We will make change, there's no doubt. So I will always quote that Alf Collins is the man that needs to be listened to. Alf Collins started a program probably 40-something years ago now, where he was doing what I'm currently trying to achieve, is allowed the animals to be adaptive and work within the system, be fertile, number one thing. Fertility. You can't have an animal on your farm if it's not producing. It doesn't make sense. Then, of course, to have that ability to stay in a good fleshy, position or body type as it goes forward in life. So his use of, and I think he did at some point use some African genetics to increase fertility, bring out from his Brahman herd that ability to be environmentally adaptive, fertile, and grow good beef. So if you want to have a look at someone that's done it well over many years, Alf Collins has done it. And I'm very lucky that the background of my Brahman cows here is from Alf Collins genetics, and they are fabulous.
Yes.
So it can be done, but our biggest challenge is a lot of the commercial herds have been pushed down certain paths because of the end result that someone over here wants. So let's say the feedlot says, I want a flat back and I want it to be 350 kilos at 12 months old. That's what they got. And what did they sacrifice to get to that particular product?
Exactly.
Yeah, so they ended up with huge cows, calving problems, whatever it might be, foot issues, not ability to go in calf until they're 3. All those sort of things come into that, selecting for certain things.
Yes.
And I will use the poor old Braffords as an example. Selecting for colour alone took them down the slab-sidedness, It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
If you select for one thing, yes, you can get that, but what do you sacrifice? Yeah. I will encourage people to really think about trying to do it chemical-free. It's not that you can't, because we're proving it. And organic people prove it. It's possible. The challenge that I was up against when I was buying people's animals in, and they were supposedly adaptive animals for this environment, they got here and I found they weren't. My question was, why are they not? Some of my answer was, I think they've been compromised. Their immune system has been compromised already. As soon as you give them an injection, as soon as you give them a chemical treatment, you start to compromise their own ability to have resistance. So, yes, I took a huge risk. I'll say that. I took a huge risk, and it's still, possible I could go down the tube. But at the end of the day, as soon as I took away doing those interventions, I'm now allowing the animal to have its own resistance. There's no doubt that some won't have it. You're going to get that, no matter which system. Humans, you'll get, people that'll be healthy all their life and some that won't, and they'll live in the same environment. Same thing happens with our cattle. So we just have to then select for that and keep working for it. But try to get away from using the chemical in the first place. I think what I heard you say earlier is you used to be a spray rig operator.
Yeah.
I absolutely nuked some country on my own farm because I thought if I just give it another dose, and then I saw 5 or 6 years worth of no growth, because I absolutely nuked it.
Yes.
And I tell people, very, very comfortably tell people, there was an example where a guy came on as a contractor onto my farm. He had a tiny bit of diluted Roundup mix still in his tank, and he wanted to clean that out and go on to an overcrop spray. And I said, well, just put it over near the fuel tank there. And it was diluted. It might have been 150 litres of water with a bit of Roundup. So it may have had maybe 1.5 litres of Roundup in that solution. That little patch of ground did not grow a single plant for 6 years. And they reckon it's got no residual effect. Now, it may not have done it from the point of view of the chemical itself, but it killed biology. It killed the ability for that soil to operate normally anymore. So you can definitely nuke country to the point where it will not operate with chemicals. Yeah, and you've got to be super, super careful. I'm also conscious of understanding and letting people know that, you know, from what I learned in the spray game, 4 grams of Ali, which is metrisulfan, on a hectare was the recommended dose, up to 7 grams. So can you imagine how small that is? Treating a whole hectare, 100 metres by 100 metres. How strong is that chemical? Hey?
That's nuts.
And that's been used over and over and over again on country. And that's when I said I nuked a paddock. I did it twice. So I did a 5 gram first application, 7 gram second application, and didn't grow grass for years. Just buggered it up.
Yep. Well, I wondered towards the end of my stint when I was doing that bit of spraying, I had to wear the PPE, the goggles and the gloves and the respirator to mix it up, and then I wondered, am I dumb to go and spray this on our food?
Exactly.
But
yeah. And so let's continue down the health point of view, because we at Eastwell Farms have what we call the Heart Summit. We started it last year, and so heart meaning health, environment, and regenerative teaching. So it's a 2-day conference that we're holding again this year. So we did one last year, got a huge amount of accolades for what we did. So we did it on a 2-day basis. First day is all about human health, and second day is all about environment and our stewardship and our working the land and the animals and whatnot. This year we're going to do it both days on farm for the conference part of it and the speakers part of it, and we're going to have a very special dinner at the night on the Saturday night with Matt Galinsky, the famous chef, doing the dinner. And once again, we're focusing on that human health part, which is connected directly to what we, the producer, does. So we start out by having nutritionists and doctors and whatnot speak on the first day, and telling you what you may not have heard before, or some that you would have probably heard before, about the necessity to make sure chemicals are out of your system, and healthy, regenerative, call it regenerative farming or organically grown, or soil health focused foods, whether they be vegetables or whether they be beef or a protein type animal protein. Understanding that is your medicine in front of anything else. And we've got so much ill health. We briefly talked about it before. So much ill health through our whole, all of Australia, all of the world really, anywhere, particularly Western world, where industrialised foods have made effectively us get crook over a long time. It's not. I'm no scientist. I definitely say I'm no scientist, but I've listened to enough, I've read enough to understand that we have gone down a silly path of poor health. So we're trying to make people a little bit more aware by doing what we do on farm and through running the likes of this little conference to just spread the word that it's possible even now to go ahead and spend your dollar in the right spot. Get healthy food as your number one thing to increase the health of the nation, because that's what it does. Like we talked about before, spend your dollar with the right farmer, it will make change.
Yep, and will make change. That will support him in changing his practices.
Absolutely, yeah. Can I just do the plug while we're at it?
Yes.
So the 24th and 25th of May is when we're holding this conference.
Perfect. And
you'll find all the information through Eastwell Farms.
Yep.
So eastwellfarms.com.au is our website, and it'll all be on there. And if you follow us on socials, it'll also be a little bit of that coming through. Yeah.
I'll put a link to all your sites in the show notes.
Yep.
Absolutely. The so just touching back on maybe the cattle and then going into some of the paddock to plate.
Mm-hmm.
So the Nguni cattle were the only cattle that could work here, chemical free.
I don't know. They're the ones we
that's
went
what
with.
You found, yeah.
I did a fair bit of homework and found that it was either them or the Toolies.
Yeah.
Toolies might have been all right. And other African breeds. And I did have some Drakens here for a little while. They weren't good as far as tick and fly. So far, that's what I found.
So you found that they've been best suited so far.
Yep.
So you get the progeny. What did that initial marketing of the animal look like? Did you try to sell them commercially first, or did you know you were going to go straight into the meat boxes?
Yeah. So when I bought my first Nguni, it came from Eastwell Farm up west of Mackay. So Rob and Deb had already done all the hard yards. So they'd found out that the Nguni was a good one to suit the environment. And then they also bought a butcher shop. So they'd already done the paddock to plate stuff. And they were able to tell me that the number one thing about the Nguni is they do eat well off grass. But not only that, but you didn't even have to hang it for 10 days or longer just to make it a bit better, you know. So Rob happily told me that he could kill something on Wednesday and sell it in the shop on Friday, and it still ate well. So that was a big accolade for this is probably a good choice. But as soon as we went into Nguni, he'd warned me that they don't fit the commercial thing at all. And we just, Susie and I, and I don't know whether Alex was involved at that early stage, but we just made the decision, all right, well, we'll just do paddock to plate. Mm-hmm. That's what it suits. Mm-hmm. So we went down that path. Hindsight might have said if I'd done a little bit more homework, I might not have, because it's a lot of hard work, and it does take a lot extra to do that next part of your selling and distribution and all the rest. But we were on board, we were going hard, and we think we've done a good job so far. We've selling all that we can grow, there's no doubt about that, and with the mushroom as our secondary part of the business, it's a good mix, and it gives us a fairly wider audience to sell to as far as both mushroom and the beef.
So for a potential customer that's wondering how a beast gets from the paddock to their plate, are you happy to go through kind of what absolutely. That process looks like?
Yeah, no, it's and that's a little bit of part of our ethos of local to local, following Slow Food's mantra as well. Effectively, they go from our farm, and I do the delivery normally directly to the abattoir, which is Nolan's at Gympie, so it's a nice short 25-30 minute maximum. They'll kill the very next morning, so I deliver in the evening. Always try and make sure I've got at least 2 animals together so that they've got their mateship and they don't stress. Mostly nowadays, though, we'd be killing 4 to 6 each time. So that's not a problem. They stay in a pen until the next morning, and they're the first to get killed in the mornings. So private kills are done on Monday morning and Friday mornings, and all I got to do is deliver the night before. And there's no compunction as what time of night. You can deliver any time. I generally try and get them just after dark so that it's cool and they're calm and whatnot. So, so that's the first part. So we try and make sure there's as least stress as possible in that operation. They're killed and become a carcass. They stay there for, if I deliver on a Thursday for a Friday kill, then they will hang until Wednesday until they get delivered down to my butcher, which is another 40-minute drive down the road to Carter's Ridge, and that's just west of Pomona, effectively. He'll do all the cut-up exactly how we ask and packaging. So he cuts it how we want, packages it how we want, and freezes it. So we get the product back from him, normally about 2 weeks after they were delivered, as a frozen packaged product. We have a 20-foot container freezer here, and effectively we just bring it back to then do distribution from the farm. So anytime we got an order that's on an online order, or we're delivering to a retail store, it goes from here.
Goes from there here as a hub.
Yep. So it's a pretty
very
nice,
local.
neat little local. Yeah, I mean, I I feel for some people trying to do the same job and they're like 3 hours from their slaughterhouse and another hour and a half to their butcher or whatever it might be. There's a lot of, and that cuts into your profit. You know, there's not a lot of profit in the beef business. Some of the reason we do it is to maintain a standard price for our animal going off farm. So we don't have to take what the market is paying. You know, when it was paying $9, we weren't paying ourselves that. We were realistic. So we'd sell into the beef business, you know, the retail side of it, at a set price. And then when it got below that and we just had the lowest, you know, that it's been for many, many years, we didn't take the low price. We set it in the middle there, you know. So we were able to pay ourselves better coming off farm. So the way we structure our business is to have a business runs the cows and a business runs the retail. So this retail business would buy our carcass straight into that retail side. And it just keeps things really simple from the point of view, this is the farm and this is how it operates and this is its profits.
Yes.
And this is the retail side of it and this is the profits.
So they're standalone and you know that you're not propping up one or the other.
No,
yeah.
And that's why I say there's not a lot of profit in the beef side of it because we're trying to maintain a reasonable return on the farm. So when the poor old guy has to go to the general market and take $2.60 for his blooming beautiful heifer that he's raised for 2 years, whatever it is, there's no money. There's no money in that for him. So I don't want to take $2.60, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'll set a price that makes it so I can make a quid on the farm. Yeah.
Is the supply and demand pretty steady? Are you guys able to produce enough Nguni, you know, grass-finished animals to supply the meat business?
No, not at all. No. And look, I'm really good at saying if there's other people out there that want to do it, jump in and do it. There's a huge market. Like we've got 1.5 million people, I think, from here to Brisbane, right at our doorstep. You know, it's not hard to find customers. Sometimes it's hard to get the customer that wants to pay the price that's needed, but there's a huge amount of people there. And it's just a matter of marketing to the right people and managing to find that opening to sell our product. And a little bit of that comes through knowledge. So we do open days on the farm here. We were doing them every month for a little while. So we'd just open up every Sunday afternoon after a kink-in market and say, come and see what we do. So I'd bring the cows in close. We'd take them for mushroom tours through the mushroom sheds and we'd talk about what we do, why we do it and how we do it. And that's just knowledge. And often if we got someone on the farm for that tour, they would become a client because now they know where their food's coming from. So we're very strong on encouraging others to jump in and do it because there's plenty of scope. They're not going to take our customer as such.
That's right.
What we're looking to do is take the customer from the commercial side. So from the point of view of the retail business, it takes a lot of extra work. So number one thing is getting known. That's the first part of the retail side is to get known that you're there selling product. So our first point of call was to go to a farmer's market, as most people try to do. And there's two sides to that there's the good and there's the bad. Number one is the bad side. You generally got to get up real early on a morning that you're going to sell at the market and get your product there, set up, display it, and try and sell it. So you've got to have either one or two people that are involved in that operation. So if you've got two people and you're trying to pay wages from, let's say, 3 in the morning until 1 in the day, or maybe even 2, depending on how far you travel for the market, there's a lot of profit goes out the door just in labour to do that operation. But you do get known. There's no doubt about that. You do get known. And to this day, our Yandina market that we now go to is our best return. We do sell a constant amount of product through Yandina market every week. We've got return clients, which is fabulous. You know, people generally when we get people buy our product, they will come back and buy more. You know, the product sells itself on taste and flavour and the goodness of it. The downside is that labour component and that time that you're spending off farm and whatnot. So the next part is to try and push online sales. To get any online sales, you've got to get known. To get known, you've got to push out ads or I suppose ads is the best way to describe it. You know, get your socials working well, get known, get some followers. And that takes a while. Like it probably took. We're still not as good as we'd love to be, and that's just time. Push, and dollars. It takes a bit of dollars to throw ads out there.
Yeah, but people can't buy from you if they don't know you exist.
That's exactly right. And a lot of people even go to the market and miss you. Like they walk right past and say, "Well, I didn't see you at the market. We've been there. We're not there. We are there. You're just talking too much or whatever it might be." So it just takes a little while. So it did take us. I think we're 3 years in now, and I think we're doing quite well. As I said, we can't grow the beef bit quick enough. I have had to buy animals in to fulfil the gap. Really, really conscious of finding the right animal. So it's an animal that's raised in the same type of environment as what we do, which is grass-fed, grass-finished, chemical-free, injection-free. Hard to find, especially on the coast. Hard to find. And what I have found is generally the ones that have got African genetics are the ones I get.
Yes.
Yeah. So most of the others can't do it.
They can't handle it.
They can't handle, the environment,
Yeah.
It's a tough call. Yeah.
What have some of the other challenges been over the last 3 years that you've seen in the paddock to plate that maybe you think someone listening who is contemplating getting the cold room trailer, getting all the gear?
You said it.
What do you think they should know?
Yeah, you did say it. I mean, the infrastructure you need is one thing. So we did have to build, a 20-foot freezer on farm. We started with just a freezer trailer. So initially we just got a little box trailer with a freezer on it. And so we'd go to the butcher, pick up the product, come home and park up the freezer and just leave it plugged in and operate out of that. We lasted probably 4 months like that. As soon as we did more than 2 animals a week, it was too much. You just couldn't do the turnover, It was just way too much. It was too hard. You had boxes everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. So, getting the freezer on farm. We've still got that trailer, so it still is our pickup and, get it from the butcher. So you just go over and fill it up and bring it home.
Yep.
It still gets left plugged in.
Yeah.
And that was another challenge is electricity use. So your energy use obviously goes up enormously. So there's a fair cost to that, which you've got to be mindful of as far as trying to do turnover. Like you can't go and say, I'll do 2 animals a month and think it's going to work, because you'll outdo it with all the costs.
Yeah.
You got to do better turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. You need the numbers.
Yeah, a little bit more numbers. Just understanding that it does take a whole heap more work. That it is more work. It's more time in your day spent doing stuff.
Yeah. Have you found, maybe just going to some of the production practices, have you found there are any practices you have to implement that correlate with getting the right product at the end, getting a nice finish? Can you talk maybe a little bit about your mineral trailer, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that probably comes down to the total package of stewardship. Obviously, every farm that we operate on, and I operate on 5 different farms, so I've got 3 that are run by the owners themselves, so it's like an agistment basis, but they've got to do the same as us. They've got to do it on a rotational basis, and they've got to do it chemical-free. So I deliver the animals onto their farm, and all I get is minerals. That's the only thing, plus the good grass. But if they just did it where they put them in a paddock and left them there, I'd probably be inclined not to run with them. I want to know they're going to get a fresh feed all the time, which also breaks those tick cycles and parasite cycles. It's got to be a similar ethos to go onto someone else's farm. Where the farms that I'm managing, so my sister's farm's just over the range there, and it's my finishing block effectively. So I put a little bit less pressure per hectare on those animals. So it's 160 acres over there, and right at the moment I'm probably similar as here, but about 1 animal to 2 acres is more than enough, Here I could probably go almost to the point where I could run 1 animal to each acre and get away with it, but I don't. I'm still running probably at a beast to 2 even here on this farm. But they're breeders, so they're drawing a fairly big amount. compared with just the finisher. At the end of the day, the practice of making sure the animal stays healthy is always our focus. So the wretched buffalo fly is a concern in this country, and it's a concern even on my Nguni. Some of them don't have a lot of effect. Others get affected. And so we do help them, and we use the diatomaceous earth boss bag as a way of letting them self-dust. I also do a manual dusting when I do a move from paddock to paddock. So I use a blower and I just dust them as they're going past, with the thinking that I hit the fly directly with the dust. And then if I've done that, there's a chance it's going to get that scratch and then it'll dehydrate and die. And I will say I've reduced numbers enormously by doing that practice compared with letting them self-dust. Then I also use the high sulfur minerals so that helps with the fly not wanting to be on the animal. So apparently it's a natural way of keeping the animal with some self protection, because the higher the sulfur in the body, obviously less likely to get the fly on it in the first place. One of the other issues we got here is that I'm trying really hard to build up my dung beetle numbers. And I think some of the reason we don't have good numbers is the good old cane toad is prevalent in our environment here as well. And they can seem to survive even when there's no water or surface water. I don't know what they do, but they're a survivor, that's for sure. And they probably sit at the cow pats and just suck up the beetles as they come out and go looking for a new pat. So I've just introduced another lot of beetles with a lot of day flyers, with the hope that we eliminate some of that issue. So just a different type of beetle. Just literally last week we introduced them, and hopefully that'll make a change. I've got some beetle here, there's no doubt about that, but not anywhere near enough to disturb the pats to reduce numbers of flies. Yeah, so that's an ongoing environmental challenge, and we hope that some of that help by putting different beetles in will help on that side. Other than that, it's just about keeping them going into a new fresh paddock that's got good green leaf and the biodiversity in the paddock here, and I showed you up the top there where we've got green panic and Rhodes grass and stuff that wasn't there when it was being grazed on a continuous basis. Those sort of plants that are highly palatable will disappear if you don't move them around.
What do your typical rotations look like, rest and recovery periods? I've
pretty much structured the farm so I could do daily moves, and I've done permanent fencing. So I'm not doing any semi-permanent or move daily type stuff. Would love to, I suppose, but just that time factor and labour factor cuts into that. So I've got 37 paddocks total, and one of those paddocks we don't really use because it's a timbered paddock. So let's say we've got 36 paddocks, so a 35-day rest at any one time. But the beauty about it, and I say it's time-controlled grazing, not just rotational grazing, is, and I've just done it, where I went up and back twice on the flat country and let my hills have a double rest. So they were up to 90 days in their rest period. So that makes a difference. You can suddenly make big changes, and you probably saw it when we drove around. You've got enormous amount of feed, a bit more biodiversity, and you can do that in a system like this, especially where we get high rainfall. Yeah. So we got 2 metres of rain in the calendar year last year. The year before was a lot less, but the year before that was a lot more. So we went 3 metres down to 870, I think it was, mils for 23, up to 2 metres for 24. So the average over 3 years is 2 metres,
Yeah.
And people can't contemplate that, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. But we can't. I would say in some ways you can't measure it exactly the same as you would in your environment or further west like a chinchilla, because 20 mils out there will have a bigger effect than my 50 mils here, because it's used to having rain, that's for sure, and so too much can do not much more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, when you get really wet, it's actually detrimental. It's detrimental, yeah.
I saw a lot of posts from back up near around Cairns. Must have been start of last year when they were all on the tablelands around Atherton experiencing that green drought where it was just far too wet. and the animals were in poor condition, but they have lush green feed right next to them.
Yeah, yeah.
But it definitely seems like it's a different beast to manage.
Yeah, yeah. But I think I meant to show you, but I did mental note as we're driving back in the buggy. I've got a paddock that drains just a valley. It's just over there. It's not a huge valley, but it drains where I drive over it regularly. So I know the runoff sort of situation. Now, yesterday we got 40 mils in a really short period of time. And the creek here, right beside the house, flooded. We couldn't get over our causeways. So this valley obviously ran water and ran it down the creek. I drove over that thing this morning. I meant to comment to you, but it didn't run a bit. So I received the 40 mils and it did not run water on my farm.
Yeah.
So there's some of the difference that comes from what we do compared with others. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of farmers up our valley. It's mostly, forest and scrub country.
Yeah.
But grass will suck it up and hold it if you get that soil working well,
For sure. Oh, it stores a lot of water, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you got to wave a magic wand, you had unlimited resources, what would be the one improvement or one piece of infrastructure you would change on your place or add to the place?
I like the second one better. We're probably doing a fair bit of what we like on this farm. I love my Lakina. So if I had unlimited funds, I would go and buy a Lakina paddock and have that as my finishing paddock. And it wouldn't need to actually have irrigation. It would just be run and managed correctly for the benefit of getting that high protein feed as well, because I just know how much difference it makes. When I see some people going and buying a farm and pulling the fences out and then pulling the trees out as well, I know why they're doing it, but it makes no sense to me, because Lakina in the system is it's like the silvo farming, where they say you start with grass, shrubs and trees. Silvo means, the whole gamut. And we humans have mucked up enough country to say, right, now we can fix it again. Well, that's what you need to do. Grass, shrub and tree. And the Lakina is a shrub. It's that middle grower. High protein, deep-rooted, responds to grow. Like the best thing it ever did for me was it responded from winter rain in the spring, even though we didn't get spring rain. Didn't have to get spring rain for it to leaf up. It had got that moisture in the winter, and away it went in the spring. So, yeah, I would go and buy a Lakina farm.
Do you think you could incorporate it on your flats anywhere around here? Would that be a possibility?
It's a challenge. Two things makes it a challenge on the coast. Number one is the psyllid insect that sucks and eats all the leaf. So they do have a variety that can handle the coastal environment, which is called redlands. And yes, it'd be lovely to do it. But on most of the country I operate on, where I could grow it, it would be too wet. So Lakina can't handle it having its roots wet all the time. Loves a good drink, but it doesn't like having a wet environment. So I would need to find a farm that was more suited to grow, Lakina. And as soon as you get over the range, it's probably possible easily. It's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, it would be challenging where I'm operating currently. I've got a paddock on my sister's block where it could probably do it, but then it's not enough. If you're going to go into Lakina, you got to do it properly and have enough of it, because you don't want them just getting a bite within a whole cycle. You want to be able to have them getting a bite all the time.
True.
To work it well.
Yeah.
But Mergen, Gameri, anywhere out there is ideally suited for Lakina. There's no doubt. What's his name? Andrew Zerner. I
spoke to him last week.
Yeah. Well, I was gisting with him for a little while, and he's got trees and it does well. Yeah. There's no doubt. Anybody should do it. It's a bit like the grazing for profit. You should just do it if you got cattle and you want to finish them.
He's who I had last week on the podcast. Great to talk to. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Does a lot of trading there. Is there a piece of equipment you reckon you couldn't live without?
On this farm, the buggy.
The buggy.
Well, a lot of people call them side-by-sides, but the buggy.
Yeah.
Look, it just makes life here so much better. Mum and Dad didn't have buggies. They just had the little four-wheel drive tractors or front-wheel assist tractors. The downside with them is they're weighty. So, and this country's like ice when it gets wet. So if you strike a bit of bare dirt, and I said to you as we were driving around, if you strike bare dirt, you just slide. You don't bog, you just slide. And Dad had a couple of very hairy experiences in his tractors. So once you start sliding, you can't stop. You know, it's a very challenging thing. Gravity's a bitch, and she never gives up.
Thank God for the Cetarian and grip.
That's right, yeah. But these buggies, they literally almost go anywhere, and I don't have a big impact. You know, you can drive around with a buggy, and you don't seem to see that you've been there. You know, the grass recovers nicely. They're not too heavy. They've got fairly broad tyres. Good grip. I get anywhere, anytime. You know, even when it's been really wet, I can still get around.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, they're a must in this country.
Yeah. I'm thinking about at the moment trading my stock trailer for a quad just to be able to get around a lot faster and more efficiently.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go quads here because of the tip over effect.
True. Very steep here.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk a little bit about the mushroom enterprise and what you guys are doing with that?
Yeah. Happy to. I mean, mushrooms are something that we all learned as we went into it. It was crazy. Susie was the one with the idea, and she was more inclined to think we wanted to go down the health benefit type mushrooms. But at that stage, and even now, it's still a challenge to grow those ones that are particularly good for the likes of PSD and is that the right acronym? Anyway, mental, issues and those sort of things. So we thought, we'll do it, but we'll grow the edible ones first and get to know how to grow mushrooms. So that's happened, and we've grown oyster mushroom, and then lion's mane was the first of the beneficial, body health beneficial type mushrooms to grow. We went down the path of doing lion's mane as a powder, so a supplement, rather than eating it as a mushroom. We still do oyster and sell quite a lot to the restaurants because it's the chef's choice, especially your high-end restaurants. It's the chef's choice because it's such a beautiful mushroom to work with. You had some this morning.
Oh, delectable.
Yeah, and so that still happens, but we're pushing a lot more towards those medicinal type ones. So reishi, turkey tail, lion's mane are still on the go currently. And Alexander's gone down the next path of doing them into what you call a tincture. So it's a liquid form,
drops.
Yeah, use it as a drop.
Yeah.
Which is a more concentrated. Effectively, you're extracting the goodness from the mushroom into a liquid form. So it's a little bit more concentrated. You only got to take a little bit and get the benefits there.
Will you do that here?
Yeah, it's all, I say to people, it's still cottage industry. We're doing most of the operations on farm in order to, do it. We're not big enough in volume to send it off to, other people to do it in volume. So, it's predominantly done on farm.
Yeah. Yeah, and the powder's the same. You can put the powder in the capsules.
Yeah.
Do that all here. Value add.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, they're going really well. The mushroom, it's thousands of years of knowledge in the bloody Chinese, culture. And unfortunately, we in the Western world have to prove everything with science. So some of the mushrooms haven't been given the tick of approval from their testing for human and human health, as such. So they're still working on that. But we know, people in the know, and particularly with the ability of Google and internet searching, you can find the benefits. It's all out there. It's been documented. And, the Chinaman's been using them for years, So all we're doing is now producing what people are looking for and wanting from a human health point of view. Yeah. And look, it's going well. It's a completely different infrastructure. Like everything's done in a controlled environment. So we had to build, a special outfit for it. So we have to mix the substrate, add the mycelium to that substrate in a special bag, which has got a little filter on it. Close it all up and let it, effectively incubate or grow. So the mycelium is like the body of the mushroom, so it has to grow. And then once it's grown and filled that bag, we can then expose it to oxygen and the right moisture and temperature for it to grow a mushroom. So the mushroom is like the reproductive part, if you can understand. So the mushroom itself is like the flower or the seed.
Right.
Yeah. And so the challenge is it's very quick, that last part. So from when you expose it to oxygen and the right environment, it'll only be 4 days to get to a point where you can pick that mushroom and it's edible or usable. And that part is 24 hours. Not every mushroom is exactly the same.
Yes.
So you'll be picking sometimes twice a day to go and get the right product off the shelf. We do try and do it in blocks, and then it comes off in blocks to a fair degree. But not every mushroom's the same.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a constant over there. It's not hard work. It's just constant.
Are you going to grow that continue to grow that side of the business?
Yeah, well, we've managed to increase production simply by changing the structure of our rooms. So I'm a little bit of a budding engineer, and make most things myself. So we went from using ready-made stick-together shelves, which were wide and folded steel type shelves, to making it as like I made it at RHS, and they're not a lot narrower and against the wall. So we get just as many, but on this much width instead of this much width.
Yep.
And we'll nearly double our capacity in the rooms just by changing the shelving. Yeah. So that's a big plus. Yeah.
And the demand, you've got good demand from chefs, restaurants, customers.
Yep. Like I wouldn't say we're selling everything we're growing. Like we have ups and downs when it comes to the oyster mushroom, which is the chef's choice. Chefs change menus. So we'll be powering along and selling, heaps of it, and all of a sudden a couple of them will change and say, oh no, we're not buying now for a bit, and you got to do something with it.
Yeah.
Now we are lucky in the fact we do a specialised product in our own beef products, so we actually add mushroom to our beef. So we have beef and mushroom sausages, we have beef and mushroom meatballs, and they are delectable. There's no doubt they are delectable. And they're one of our highest sellers,
And you're doing like a bit of a primal blend too, aren't you, for some customers that want?
Yeah, well, that came through our when we were down at Noosa Farmers Market. A couple of the health-conscious people were asking us whether we could sell raw liver, and we were doing that quite a lot. And then someone said, "Can you do it in a mince?" And we said, "Yeah, absolutely." So once we did that, and we call it Healthy Hearty Mince. So it's got both heart and liver as a 10% extra in the mince, and it is our highest selling product.
Yeah. It's a great way to get the benefits of it, but just mash it up, put it in a patty or whatever it might be.
Yeah. No, we do it just as a sausage now and a mince. That's how we do it. Yeah.
Sausage and mince.
Yeah, sausage or a mince. Yeah.
Oh.
And look, it has a flavour. There's no doubt about that, but it's not a strong liver flavour. A lot of people don't like liver, but those that are conscious about getting that primal benefit, the nutrient benefit, then it's not a strong flavour. It has a flavour, but not a strong flavour. So that's probably why it is our best-selling product. No doubt about that.
Who would have thought? Eh?
Yeah, that's right. Who would have thought? Yeah, and sometimes we can't keep up enough liver to supply that side of our business.
Yes. So maybe on the boxes or when you're selling a carcass, how are you selling them? Do you have minimum order sizes so that you're moving all cuts, all different parts of the animal?
To a degree. So online we have availability to choose what you want to buy. So literally can start with one pack of whatever, 2 pieces of rump. You can do that, but you'll pay a very high price on the delivery side. So you're better to buy a minimum of about $150 worth to make your freight side work out better. And the next thing is, if you can go further than that, go up to about $300, we will deliver it free to our local area. So through that, we're encouraging people to buy more in one go, obviously, from a delivery point of view. And some of our ethos is low food miles, so we don't want to have to travel 4 times to you to get you the same amount of product. you would prefer to sell it to you once in a bigger box,
Mm-hmm.
have you store it, and us only travel once. So, there's always the thought of do it, less food miles, less cost to the environment.
Yes.
In order to deliver what we do. So our website, which Alexander has put together, effectively has allowed people to put their own box together of whatever they want. So the only thing I don't think we offer fresh oyster mushroom or fresh mushroom within that. They can ring us and ask us whether it's possible, and sometimes we can, but when we're delivering a frozen product, you can't throw the mushroom into that box because it'll get to you and it's buggered.
Yes.
So that's the only downside is the mushroom side. So where possible, we try and sell our fresh mushrooms at the markets that we go to, or encourage people to come here to the farm. We do have a farm shop. We open on Fridays and Sundays, and they can pick it up if they really want fresh mushrooms. It's possible.
Yes.
That's for sure. If it's for the health benefit, well, then we've got the dried product and the tinctures going out now.
Yeah.
And that can be delivered anywhere because it's a dried product, goes in the post.
Yeah.
You can do that. So, we're pretty comfortable that the website's a good one, easy to manage. It's all available on there, all different options. He's got sort of, if you buy 5, you'll get it at less price than if you bought 1. There's the normal thing when it comes to e-commerce selling online. Yeah. And from the point of view of the carcass side of it, we were allowing people initially just to contact us and say, we'll sell you a carcass, or we'll sell you a half, or sell you a quarter. And they would get what I killed for them. But that was too hard on the communications because I had to get it killed first to get the weight. And then I had to get back to them and say, well, this is the weight. How do you want it cut up? And then how they got it cut up was a different value. One person might want just all primals, and the next person wanted it cut up and packaged. So it's a different price. So we've gone a bit more standardised on that side. So quarters and halves are standardised, 2 different styles are cut up, and it's the easiest way for us to manage that. Yeah, and the people that have done it, they've been happy. It's less than on a per kilo basis. Definitely a less, cost.
Yep.
If you buy it that way.
Yep.
Than if you do it per pack.
Yes. Yeah. No, Brian, I really appreciate you being so transparent and taking the time out of the day to, put breakfast on for me, take me around your lovely farm here in Kin. Where can people find you guys? I think you've already listed off the website. I've got all the dates for your Heart Summit.
Yep.
You guys are also on, I know you're on Instagram. Alex is pretty active on there, on Facebook.
Yeah.
Anywhere else I'm missing where people could?
I don't think so. I mean, if we went right through, we go to the Andina Market every week. So find us at the Andina Market. Find us at Kin Market once a month because they only do a once a month market. That's on a Sunday. Look out for our open days. We always encourage people, if you want to, come to the farm. We open up regularly. It's not standard, but it's regular. And definitely have a good look at our Heart Summit that's coming up, because last year's one, the people that came were overjoyed with what we offered for them, and we hope to do as good a job or better this year. So that's coming forward. And then, of course, the socials. So they're all under Eastwell Farms, all one word, Eastwell Farms.
Yeah. I think I follow them all, so I'll put their links in.
Yeah.
Their links in there.
And then the website is just eastwell.com.au.
Yeah. And that's where.
Sorry, Eastwell Farms, all the one word, eastwellfarms.com.au.
Yep. And that's where they can order meat online.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all there, and I think it's pretty easy, navigable website. Yeah.
No, thank you so much for jumping on, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Love the fact you can make it out. I much prefer to sit and talk face to face. It's really good fun. I hope you enjoyed the environment.
Loved it.
We get up most mornings and say another day in paradise. So
awesome.
It is pretty good. Yeah, awesome. It's very nice. And thank you for highlighting a little bit of what we do and why we do it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Bye.